Hey y'all, this is Systemshark bringing to you another audio commentary for WCReplays.com. This audio commentary copyrighted 2007 WCReplays.com. As always, don't go stealing it, you jerks. So go ahead and get the first replay file synced up at the 30-second mark at the 1x speed. It's going to be Lost Temple. It's a 2v2 strategy I'm going to go over to this time. It's actually going to be a feeding strategy, so some of you may be familiar with that, some of you may not be, so I'm going to kind of go over how the build orders work for these time of feeding strategies. I will go over the strategies used for this particular one. Maybe you guys can try it out and see what you guys think, or maybe if you've heard about it already, you can give me your comments, what you thought about the strategy, or what you've already been thinking about the strategy if you knew about it. So we're going to start this at the 30-second mark just so I can talk a little bit more about the build orders. So go ahead and sync the replay file to the 30-second mark and get it paused, and then we're going to unpause together so we can be synced up. I'm going to have it at the 1x speed, and the fog of war is going to be off. We're going to unpause in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, unpause. Alright, the team we're going to be looking at is the Undead and Night Elf team. They're going to be facing off versus an Orc and Undead team on Lost Temple. It's a pretty big map here. We'll go over map situations later on in the map, but I want to first talk about build orders. The Night Elf's build order, you'll notice he's going for just an altar and a moonwell, and he's also got he's actually not filling up his gold mine early on with his wisp. Instead, he's sending a few of his starting wisps to lumber, and he actually scouts with another one of his wisps. So that's definitely something you want to do with this feeding strategy. The build order goes altar first, and when the wisp is done building that altar, you send him to the gold mine, and then you build a moonwell with the first wisp that comes out, and then send that wisp to lumber. The second wisp that comes out, send to wood, and then send your third one to wood as well. Then take one of your starting wisps that was mining the gold and send that to wood as well. Fourth one goes to wood, fifth one goes to wood, sixth and seventh. Actually, just the sixth one goes to wood, then the seventh goes to gold. The eighth one and ninth are going to go to wood. So you should have 9 on wood at the end of all this. A lot on wood. Immediately, the Night Elf player is going to be feeding his resources to the Undead player, and this allows the Undead player to immediately tech. He builds a graveyard and then he techs. That's it. That's his starting build orders, to build a graveyard and then tech. And then he builds an altar when he has resources, and then a ziggurat. And right as soon as the altar finishes, he builds a Tomb of Relics. He also builds a crypt early on, and when he has resources, he builds a second one. Eventually, he's going to build 3 of them. As you see right now, he's got 3 altars, or 3 going up right now. His Tomb of Relics, he starts building right as the altar finishes, so that when the hero comes out, it'll be right in sync with when the Tomb of Relics finishes. So you notice when these 3 crypts, when they're all finished being constructed here, he's going to be right at tier 2, and since he has his graveyard up, he's immediately going to be able to produce gargoyles. And this is an adaptation of the 1v1 strat, the Goul Garg, only there's not so many ghouls starting out, just these 2. The strategy is to rush these gargoyles out as soon as possible, and then hit your opponents before they suspect anything. Now, even if the strategy gets scouted out, you still have a little bit of time to build up your gargoyle army. Because it's going to take your opponent some time to build up a counter to your gargoyles. Now, the strategy here is not necessarily in that you're going to win the game with solely gargoyles. The strategy here is that you've gone gargoyles to force your opponents to go lower HP ranged units to try to take out your gargoyles, and then all the time your big master plan is basically to counter the counter to that, which is with the ghouls here. And late game, you'll actually see frost worms implemented in this match and in the other replay we're going to saw. So it's going to be kind of interesting to watch. The Night Elf player's job solely in this game is to feed his resources solely to the Undead player. You notice he doesn't build any production buildings. He only has 2 moonwells going up, and he actually builds a Huntress Hall so he can tower up his base in case he gets some pressure put on him. But the idea for the Night Elf player is to use that Demon Hunter and to harass the opponents. You're basically wanting to stop them from creeping freely. You don't have to necessarily kill any of their heroes, although in this example we are going to see that this Tauren Chieftain is going to go down from the middle there. But he does a cool little trick here, and he gets killed by the center creeps, though. Little mistimed mana burn there. He might have been able to mana burn and get the kill on that at some point, but instead he has to back off. At least the Tauren Chieftain's down now, so that means he's not creeping. Now, a Tauren Chieftain is a really weird starting hero, obviously, for Orc. You don't see that a lot in solos. You see it a few times in 2v2s. You have a little bit more flexibility because you have another teammate to kind of depend on. But he's kind of a weak hero early on. He doesn't have a lot of harassing potential. He can't defend against harasses that much, and he's really not that good of a creeper. But getting him higher levels quicker is really good. You get a level 3 Tauren Chieftain at a time when, level 2 Shockwave and having that Endurance Aura along with, let's say, Unholy Aura from his teammate there. It's it's really going to be beneficial here. So the point that Orc and Undead players go, and I know this because I basically play Orc and Undead, is kind of my main race with my girlfriend there. We basically use grunts as the front lines, and I usually mass produce grunts out of 2 barracks, and she goes a lot of focus fire damage with fiends, just as this player is going. And she does all the DPS while I try to take it all and, you know, micro around, do some cute little things or whatever. So that's my strategy with that. That's kind of what the idea is between these 2 players too. Unfortunately, as it's only under 5 minutes in the game now, just now 5 minutes in the game, and the Undead player and the Night Elf hero, the blue Undead player, are going to harass that Orc base. That Orc doesn't have any counter or any idea that he's going to be up against heirs in under 5 minutes in the game. So immediately, Tier 2 just finished recently for this Orc player, so he's not going to be able to put up his Tier 2 buildings quickly, so that faster tech has now become useless, and now he's not going to have burrows to make any unit production. So this is actually a really, really bad situation now for this Orc player, and this is actually the 5 minutes in the game now, and this Orc player is going to be crippled for the remainder of the game. You notice it's not even a quarter away finished with the replay, and this Orc player is pretty much going to be trying to compensate the rest of the game to try to, you know, make do with what he's got, and he's, you know, lost all his burrows here, so he's not going to be able to produce any units. He's researching Berserker Strength, but right now he's not going to be able to produce any more grunts. If we switch to his field of vision, you'll actually notice that he's in red farm count, so obviously he doesn't have any burrows, so all he has is what he had out before, which is those 4 grunts and his Tauren Chieftain. Now that's a pretty sizable army for an Orc, actually. That's pretty much what you have around Tier 2, so killing all those burrows is really just delaying him from being able to do anything with his tech, which is exactly what you want to do. So immediately, once you see that your opponents see that you have the gargoyles in this strategy, you got to start thinking counter to that. So right as soon as Tier 2 finishes for this orange Undead player, he's going to research web, and that's immediately going to make the gargoyles relatively useless. I mean, they're going to be able to be focused down from grunts and from the fiend focus fire. Obviously with web, they're going to be on the ground so everyone can hit them. So right now he's basically has a timer going off in his head. He realizes that his Gargs are going to be countered relatively quickly, and although he's got a good amount of them, they're really easily countered with web or with any amount of anti-air. If he didn't actually hit this Orc opponent, the Orc opponent might have been able to produce a good amount of bats, and even though he is eventually going to be getting armor upgrades for his air units, earlier on like this, he doesn't have them, and bats are a really, really good counter to that. So another big part of the strategy is for you to be able to allow your Night Elf teammate to expand freely. So one of the first creep camps that the Undead player and the Night Elf player crept out was his natural expansion. Not necessarily for him, but for his Night Elf teammate. Now this is the best expansion spot for the 2v2 teams because it's in between both teams and they can protect it it's in between both teammates, so they can protect it relatively easily. So if you're wondering what's a good expansion spot, always realize that the one that's kind of in between you and your ally is definitely good than the one that's closer between you and your enemy. You know, obviously you can protect it a lot quicker. So he's creeping out his allies, the Night Elf player's natural expansion, and he's going to get hit here, and now web is going to be researched, or it's almost done research now. So he's going to be in trouble here. Immediately web a few of these gargoyles. He realizes he's in trouble having to deal with all these fiends and these grunts, and now he's going to have to deal with web. So before he loses too many Gargs, he's going to TP out. He loses 1 already, and he loses 2 to that Stomp Focus Fire right there. So 2 Gargs left, and he had to burn the TP. And now he's going to actually have to buy another TP so he can come back and help defend. Actually, no, he was a smart decision maker here. He, instead of TPing to his base, he instead TP'd to his ally's base, who's really well defended now with all these Moonwells. It's a really, really tight base design. So as the Night Elf player here, you want to make sure that you have this really tight base design, make it almost impossible for the enemies to come in there and siege your base without any siege themselves. So Fiends actually take reduced from piercing damages, which is what the Ancient Protector is going to be doing, but everything else is going to get pretty much reaned. Although heavy armor, they don't take extra from magic attacks, they don't take reduced from it like the Fiends do with their medium armor. So you notice the Undead player, the blue Undead player, is making sure he doesn't bring his Gargs too far out. If he's going to have a web Garg, he wants to at least have them so that a few of the units are at least in range. So this Orc is doing a pretty good job of trying to not lose his grunts right now. He's using a Wand of Illusion, really, really good there. The Mana Burn actually went off on the Illusion target, and he's getting focus fire by all this stuff, so it sucked up a Mana Burn at least on it. That's definitely a good idea with the Illusion there. But doing an Illusion right in front of you where your opponents can see it, it's not necessarily the best way. You want to kind of have that already instead. The biggest part of the strategy, if you want to force your opponents back, it's not necessarily kill off all their units, especially when they